Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, singer, guitarist, songwriter extraordinaire, John Oates is out with his new single, Disconnected. Great to have you on the show, John.
Well, thank you. I love talking about new music.
Absolutely. And you're full of wonderful songs, and we're going through many difficult challenges in the world today. And I know that you said we all feel disconnected from something or someone, but your message with this song is to never give up. Can you explain it a little bit more?
Well, it's kind of a recurring theme, really. I released the song late last year in November in 22. It was called Pushing a Rock, and it was about overcoming challenges. It's kind of a recurring theme with me. It's something that I've been kind of dealing with in my life personally and also professionally in certain ways. So it's only natural as a writer that you tend to use the strong emotions and the strong circumstances that you encounter to somehow it becomes reflected in your art or your music or your writing. And I think that's what's going on. It's just been something I've been thinking about, something I've been trying to deal with ever since the pandemic, when I had a chance to reflect on a lot of things. So yeah, it's very introspective in a lot of ways, but at the same time, I try to make it something that can be universally appreciated, understood, and maybe related to by a lot of people. And as a songwriter, that's kind of the secret sauce. Taking something that might be very personal to you emotionally, but crafting it in a way that people respond to in their own unique way. It's kind of a little bit here again. It's a little magic, deep inside the craft of songwriting.
John Oates certainly has magic when it comes to songwriting. This disconnected, whether it's emotionally, physically, spiritually, is something, yes, we can all relate to. But, I think I get a sense that during the pandemic, it was a time of reflection for you and great productivity too, even with GarageBand.
Absolutely. I was so prolific. It took me a while to get going, I can tell you that. At first, it was a kind of a shock to the system. It was like, wait a minute. You mean I'm not going to be getting on a plane? I'm not going to a hotel. I'm not going to be touring, a lot. It was really a whole readjustment period. And then I settled into it and I embraced it. I said, well, now I have a chance to not only stay home, enjoy being at home with my family, but to go back into my archives, find stuff, revisit things that I might have forgotten about. All sorts of stuff began to happen, and good prolific inspirational things began to happen. I began to write a lot. I've always used GarageBand. I use GarageBand. I've been one of the early adopters of GarageBand. I started way back in the early 2000s when it was first invented, and in fact, I was actually part of in a small way, part of a little bit of Apple development. I made some suggestions about how to use it and that I thought would be, really good for, and they adopted it, which I was kind of, very pleased with. It had to do with, I was using it as a songwriting tool. And what I was doing was I was pulling up a Word document on this and splitting the screen using GarageBand to record the music and typing lyrics on an adjacent Word document. And I thought to myself, well, why should I be doing that when I'm sure Apple can figure out a way of putting a very simplistic word processor into GarageBand. And sure enough, I made that suggestion and they said, oh yeah, why not? So off on the right now, when you pull up GarageBand, if you want, you can pull up a little very simplistic Word document and you can have it on the same screen. So you don't have to be going back and forth between screens. And you could be writing a song, typing out some lyric ideas all at the same time. So I was pretty proud of that. And here again, it's as GarageBand, I mean, I don't know how deep into this you want to get because I can go pretty deep, but GarageBand, as it's evolved, has become very sophisticated. I mean, it's really Logic Lite is what it really is at this point, since Apple owns Logic too. But for me, not wanting to be an engineer and getting bogged down in a lot of technology, I'm very quick on it. I'm very fluid. I know how to use it. So if I have a song idea, boom, I pull it up. I'm writing immediately without all the rigmarole of worrying about a lot of sophisticated engineering techniques.
Another thing that John Oates has to be proud of is when you have so much fame and when you're part of the most successful duo in music history with Hall and Oates, with you and Daryl Hall, you could just rest on your laurels and not give back. But that's not you. You've been giving back a long time and doing a lot of charity work. You mentioned Pushing a Rock, co-written with the Grammy-winning producer Nathan Paul Chapman.
Yep.
And it was all part of a men's health charity that you were working with Movember, dealing with men's health issues. And then you and your wife put on a virtual song festival that streamed online for the benefit of Feeding America. So how about this giving back for John Oates? When did that start?
So it started as soon as I had the wherewithal to give something back. I mean, look, I've always been, I always feel like I've been, fortunate and blessed to have the kind of life that I have, and to be able to make music as a way of not only expressing myself, but providing a very comfortable lifestyle for myself, and a very exciting, lifestyle. And I feel like if I have an opportunity to help out, and I've always been a proponent of the idea of, thinking globally and acting locally, things that were close to, my heart. My wife is very active with charity work at the local hospital and with the assisted living. We've always done things for children over the years, for St. Jude's, and on and on and on. Well, I don't need to, talk about all that stuff. But the point being is, I just feel like it's a necessary part of who I am, and who my wife and I, like to think of ourselves as, and try to help when we can.
I know. So I know that you're also excited about this new video for your new single, and you tapped Nashville visual artist Jason Lee Denton, and
Yeah.
even a little inspiration from Taylor Swift. Tell us about this video.
Yeah, I mean, Taylor Swift she is a one-woman force of nature, and having worked with Nathan Chapman, who also produced Taylor's early albums and everything, so we have a lot, little bit of a synergy between us. We don't know each other very well or anything like that, but I was just impressed with it. She came out with all these crazy videos, and really, actually not crazy at all. Very, very creative. And then she did that Visa the Visa credit card commercial, which everyone I'm sure has seen, where there's all multiples of her doing various things, and it's very clever and very funny and all that. And I thought, oh, that's cool. And I spoke to Jason, who I've done the last couple videos with. He's a great director. And I said, how does she do all that stuff? I don't know how that technology works. He said, oh, yeah, we can do it. Do you want to do that? And I said, yeah, let's do something like that. Let's have some fun with it. Because I did play a lot of the instruments on Disconnected, on the song. A lot of my GarageBand tracks are actually still on the finished record, even though I included live players over the top of them. So I thought, and I sang all the backgrounds myself and all that. So I said, why not, take a page out of the Taylor Swift book, and, just kind of have some fun with it.
You can describe your music in many different ways. I hear a really bluesy sound coming from John Oates at times, a really soulful sound, of course, being a pop icon. How do you describe your music right now, John?
I'm just a product of my roots. I'm a product of my influences, and which is what I always tell young musicians and writers when they ask for advice. I always dig, but the older you get, and the more experiences you've had musically, the more it's like building up a bank. It's like building a bank account of inspiration, and I'm able to go into that bank account and withdraw. And when I withdraw from the past. I would always withdraw from the past. I withdraw from the stuff that turned me on as a kid, the stuff that I learned as a kid, the thing, whether it be the folk and early blues and traditional music that I was very much involved in the 60s, on, into the early, back even further to the early days of rock and roll, and to the classic R&B, a lot of which happened in the 60s and 70s. On this series of music that I'm making now with Pushing a Rock and Disconnected, I'm kind of tapping into a 70s R&B feel. Some reason, I don't know why, it just feels like that.
When we talk about influences for John Oates, I want to mention the name Mississippi John Hurt. And for those who aren't familiar with Mississippi John Hurt, wonderful player. Dixieland dipped in bluegrass and salted with Delta blues is all part of his finger picking style, his guitar playing. When you think of Mississippi John Hurt, what comes to mind?
Well, great memories because I got to see him perform in the early 60s during the folk revival. Being in Philadelphia at the time, Philadelphia Folk Festival, the great series, there were a number of coffee houses that were really popular, and a lot of these traditional blues and folk performers, as they were being rediscovered, were coming up to Philadelphia. And I had an inside track through a mutual friend who happens to be in that picture right there. Who was very much, he was actually Mississippi John's kind of road manager, so to speak, and helping him get places and doing things like that. And you have to remember, he recorded in the late 1920s on OK Records, but then he really disappeared from the 40s all the way up to the 60s when he was rediscovered. And he was rediscovered from basically 1960 and passed away in 1966. So he wasn't around that long once he was rediscovered. But I had a chance to hear him and see him up close and personal, and I just loved him. I loved his style. I loved his personality, and I as the years went on, after he passed away, his guitar was given to Jerry Ricks, the guy in the picture behind me, and that guitar was then brought up to New York, and I'm playing Mississippi John Hurt's guitar on the first two Hall & Oates albums. That's his guitar that I'm playing. So I have a very deep connection to him, and I wanted to honor him with recording a few of his classics, but do it in a different style. I put together an amazing band for an album called Arkansas, and not only did we do Mississippi John Hurt's stuff, but we did a lot of other people's stuff that was kind of kind of period correct for the early days of the Delta blues and folk and country blues.
That band that John is referring to performed at the Exit Zero Jazz Festival in Cape May back in 2019, the Good Road Band. So you can hear Arkansas, that wonderful album that John put together. As he mentioned, a series of Nashville recording sessions that really evolved into all different kinds of artists. So exciting stuff there as well. Let's go back just a little bit, because I'm always fascinated at the first meetings and whatnot. Temple University, you're wrestling there, first of all, after a good high school wrestling career. I'm a sports guy, so I have to mention that, John. Okay. But at Temple University, you run into Daryl Hall. What's the first thing you remember about this duo when you think of Temple University and getting together? And little did you know at that point that you would become the most successful duo in music history.
Well, we certainly didn't realize it when we met, I can tell you that. I was aware of Daryl because he was the singer in a group called the Temp Tones. Temp meaning Temple University, Temp meaning Temptations. And I had a group called the Masters. We both had recorded in the summer of 1967. We both recorded singles independently of each other. We were not aware of each other. But basically, those songs were being played on local Philadelphia R&B radio at the time, and I got to see him perform at a show in Philadelphia, and then we were both invited to perform or lip sync our singles, which was common, in those days for a DJ at a teenage dance in West Philadelphia. And a big gang fight broke out. We kind of went down a service elevator. We met, both realized we were going to Temple University. One thing led to the other. We began to kind of see each other, and then one thing led to the other. My group was breaking up. His group was breaking up. He and I kind of gravitated toward each other, began to try to write some songs, and then we actually were on a little bit of a hiatus between 68 and 1970, where we were doing individual things. Not, we were friends, but not really playing together. And then I went to Europe for a few months, and when I came back, we both kind of were like, hey, let's try something together, on a little bit more official level, I guess you'd say. And then we got a record contract and blah, 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 so.
Born in New York City, but as you talked about, Philadelphia is near and dear to your heart as well. Any interest in the Eagles in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, being from Philadelphia, you can't help but being an Eagles fan. I remember the first time I remember professional football was when I was a little kid, and this was prior to the Super Bowl. National championship was on the radio, and my father was listening to it. It might have been Norm Van Brocklin, I think. I think, I'm not sure, but that was the first time I remember. But Philadelphia is an amazing sports town, and people from Philadelphia are the Philly fanatic is not is definitely an accurate description for a mascot. It's going to be wild. It's going to be wild, and also I follow college football. I'm a big college football fan, and I got a chance to hang out in Tuscaloosa and met Nick Saban, and went to an Alabama practice one time when we were down there. And at the time when Jalen Hurts and Tua were both on the team, and I got to watch them practice and everything. So always really liked Jalen Hurts. I liked his. I like his demeanor, his profession. Even he kept his cool when he was kind of benched, and then he came back and helped them win. And he was always really classy, and I always liked him. And the fact that his father was a football coach, and he just has a lot going on. He's a really cool guy, and I think it's going to be an amazing matchup.
I'm going to bring this up with Kevin Eubanks today, too, when we talk about his Eagles loyalty. Jalen Hurts is like a jazz musician or a blues musician because he creates stuff out of nothing, right? He creates things on the moment. He is so imaginative on the football field. When it comes to sports, as a wrestler, you have a sports background. Is there a connection between music and sports? A lot of people talk about it. How about your thoughts on that?
Well, I think anyone who attains a certain level of proficiency, when you're learning something, I don't care whether it's sports, music, whatever it might be, you know, all you're focused on is developing a skill, developing, the ability to do something, whether it's your athletic skills or your guitar playing or your singing, whatever it might be. But then when you get to the point when you can transcend the kind of mechanical part of what you do, that's when the real inspiration and creativity can blossom, because you have to have the foundation. You gotta play the pee-wee football and the high school football and the college, whatever. You gotta take your guitar lessons and play the clubs and develop how to be a performer or whatever. But once you get to that point, if you do get to that point, then you can start to use these all these influences and strengths and bring them to bear, and you can do things. And that's what you see in these high level athletes. Like, you talk about creativity, you got Patrick Mahomes, the ultimate, modern, template or prototype for the modern, quarterback and everything like that. So, and Jalen does it as well in his own way. He's a bit more of a physical runner. He's stronger and more powerful. But he can throw too. So it's a whole new world out there, and the level of these new younger people, and not only in athletics but in music as well. Some of these great young players, musicians, some of them are so good, that it's just kind of frightening, to be honest with you. So anyway, yeah, it's just it's an evolution of our world, our society, I guess.
Great improvisation. We're speaking with the incredible John Oates here. When we talk about being on stage and talking about performing, you get to have three artists, either still with us or not, that you want to take with you to perform at a magical venue where only a few people are allowed to be. Who would those artists be, John, and why?
Oh, you mean, can I bring them down from heaven and
You can,
okay, or hell, or wherever they might be,
wherever they have landed.
wherever they ended up? Oh, that's easy. This is a good question and an easy question. I'd be there with Chuck Berry, Doc Watson, Mississippi John Hurt, and Curtis Mayfield, and I'd be like right in the middle. Let these guys do their thing, and I would be trying to keep up. That's what I would do.
Do you remember the first blues or jazz tune that you ever heard, and did it move you?
Oh yeah, well, see, here's the thing. I'm old enough to remember music before rock and roll. My parents were of the World War II generation. I grew up listening to swing music, big band music. That was the music they were playing, and so I remember that even as a little kid because I was musically inclined, and I guess I was sensitive to hearing things in a different way, perhaps. And then when rock and roll started, I realized it was something new had happened. I was only 4 or 5 years old. But I began to play guitar immediately. I was singing, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I mean, one of the first, here again, and I even play big band swing music. I enjoy playing that on the guitar. But I think the first kind of pop record I remember hearing was a song called Cry by Johnny Ray. Johnny Ray was a very interesting character. He was very, he had a very flamboyant kind of, he used to rip his shirt off when he sang and stuff like that. He was kind of a proto rocker, I guess you'd call it, kind of rock before rock. But then I also saw, when I was a little kid at an amusement park in Philadelphia, I got to see Bill Haley and the Comets, back in 1954, I believe it was, or
Oh,
55. Yeah, play Rock Around the Clock. And I stood right at the front of the stage in this little band shell at a local amusement park. And that was mind blowing. And I think that was really when I really said, okay, this whatever's happening here is something I'm going to be part of or want to be part of.
as we let you go, Disconnected, your new single, as I mentioned earlier, a strong message about never giving up. But what's not in the song? How can we become more connected in this very troubled society right now, John?
Wow, that's a deep, deep question. Listen, it's up to us to be human, to try to promote kindness and love and all the positive things about the human condition. It's not, we everyone, there's so much going on, and I think if we can all kind of occasionally step out of this accelerated world that we're all part of, the internet and the demands on our time and our minds and hearts. It's just a really it's a hard thing to do, and I think if everyone realizes that it's good to step back, I meditate, I do yoga, I try to stay fit and try to clear my head of the all the crazy stuff that's swirling around inside me and outside me.
Still using the routines you used to stay fit when you were wrestling?
Sure. I mean, I've been kind of an athletic. I've always been athletic from the time I've been a little kid. Wrestling was probably one of the greatest. Wrestling was good for me because I'm short and I was fairly strong, so it was good. But I was a very accomplished skier, and I ride road bikes, mountain bikes. I do that. I like to hike. I like to be in the mountains, in the woods. It clears my head, gives me a sense of perspective.
Is there anything that John Oates can't do? Well, that'll be for
Yeah,
another show.
there's a lot of things we don't have time.
Want to thank John Oates, out with his new single, Disconnected. But don't forget Pushing a Rock as well, part of this wonderful release with strong messages, with incredible songwriting, and of course, great music. John, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. This was a great interview. Appreciate you.